Welcome, listener, to the Prologue of Bite-Sized Tales, the Flash Fiction audio podcast. My name is Chris.
This is Dot.
And my name is Wayne.
The three of us are essentially the three authors behind this little podcast venture. And this is probably going to be the only unscripted chapter or episode of Bite-Sized Tales, as the rest of them, of course, obviously are going to have short flash fiction stories. What we're going to do here is talk about, obviously, what the podcast is, where it's going to go, what you can expect when you listen to it, and maybe just a little bit more about who we are. So let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit about what this podcast is. Now, obviously, we've already kind of revealed that a little bit. This is essentially audio fiction, but it's a particular kind of fiction.
We are doing flash fiction. Flash fiction has a variety of definitions, but essentially it's something in the 1,000-word range, something short, easy to digest, and not as long as a short story.
And so when read, most of the time you can read a flash fiction story easily in, 5-10 minutes, depending upon that total word count. But it really is a bite-sized piece of fiction. And that's kind of really the impetus where this podcast came from. And I think with that, rather than have it be just a single author sharing their stories over and over again, the idea of getting a couple other voices involved here really helped to enhance the overall experience.
At this point, we have decided to read our own stories for the most part, but as the podcast continues, perhaps we will bring in voice talent. Perhaps we will release these stories in the form of anthologies in print, or perhaps we may do an audiobook at some point.
Yeah, it's something, it's really kind of much like a living document. This is kind of a living podcast entity in that sense. What it's going to develop kind of remains to be seen over time. You alluded to something there, Wayne, and since Dot hasn't spoken yet, we'll have her pipe up on this one. Approximately how many stories are we looking to try and put in each particular chapter?
All stories all the time. No, generally it should be one story per chapter, which is what we're referring to the episodes as. And that being said, some chapters will have themes that are applied to them that may require more than one story be recorded. There may be opportunities that we take advantage of using specific genre or themes to collaborate on stories or use a specific prompt that we all three write upon and do more of a collaborative chapter. But yeah, generally trying to keep it as bite-sized as we can.
Yeah, the initial core idea was something that you could enjoy over your lunch break. Not necessarily consuming your entire lunch break, but a good portion of it. Or if you had a short commute or had to take a walk downtown or something that you'd be able to listen to, get that little bit of entertainment that wouldn't take up too much time in your day. And Dot was right. She had mentioned, as far as genres and themes, it's really going to vary from week to week, depending upon what stories we have, in the hopper and what themes might strike us. Obviously, at certain times of the year, there may be various different themes or stories that will show up. But, all three of us have different enough backgrounds, though there is some commonality there, that I think that we should be able to cover a wide variety of genres.
In case you're curious where this idea came from, starting in September of 2020, I started doing on my blog, WayneCole.net, what I call Fiction Fragment Fridays. And I named it that because initially I had so many stories I had started and never finished that I wanted to get some of them out there and start getting feedback. As I started it, I realized that a lot of these little chunks could actually be modified into flash fiction. From there, I started writing new flash fiction every single week. Well, one day I get a message from Chris that says, I've got a podcast idea.
Because you already have such good writing habits as opposed to the other two people on this podcast, we have a very good, solid library of stories to already choose from, which I think is fantastic. Before we close this out, release schedule-wise, we're looking to do what, Dot? You're the one who usually keeps everybody on schedule. So what are we thinking here as far as releases?
So we should be releasing weekly every Wednesday. It'll be Wednesday mornings, midnight Central Standard Time. From there, we'll also release across several different Discord servers that the three of us are a part of, as well as to our Twitter, which is predominantly where we will have any sort of community outreach, which building a following there is kind of the beginning stage.
If you do want more, if you want to learn more as we continue and grow, of course, website is bitesizedtales.com. Or if you happen to, have an extra D line around bite-sized tales, will also take you to the exact same place. So we just want to make sure that all the bases were covered, because sometimes when you say bite-sized tales, if it comes out fast enough, you may hear extra consonants that may or may not be in there. So we're just, trying to be thorough. Any parting words from either one of you before we finish out this prologue?
Just that we will be releasing to all major podcatchers. We're on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify.
Thank you so much for listening. And as our audience continues to grow, we will grow with our offerings as well.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks for sharing your lunch with us.
This chapter of Bite-Sized Tales has been brought to you under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Intro and outro music is Fantasy Motion by Alexander Nakarada, provided under a Creative Commons 4.0 license. If you've enjoyed what you heard today, we would greatly appreciate reviews and recommendations to your friends. Finally, for more information about our authors, visit bitesizedtales.com. We can't wait to read to you again next time.